So welcome everybody to the Parmjeet and Pradeep show. Parmjeet, how are you?
I'm okay, man. How are you?
I'm great. I'm feeling rested as we briefly had a conversation prior to this episode. I'm feeling good after coming back from vacation. Um,
Yeah, I think Italy did you good.
it did me a lot of good. It gave me a good tan, but also got me all rested up too.
Yeah, but I think there are often times whenever I go to India and I come back, and students will say that, okay, you are heavily tanned. And I said, you want a tan free for life? Come with me to India during August or July. That tan will last you for maybe a year, so you can have a free ride around. Uh,
You're good to go, right?
you're good to go. Yeah, so you don't have to visit any studios or so.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're going to be chatting about an interesting topic. We're going to be talking about pressures from family and beyond. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very interesting thing. As we were talking before we went live, in my classes, oftenly this is because I often have individuals from our South Asian countries, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, uh, students in my classes, and whenever we talk about pressures, it will always come down that ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਚਾਚੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਤਾਈ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ um, mama, they are saying all these things that that they are saying, they are telling them to who to marry, what to marry, when not to marry, what to pursue, what not to pursue, what to wear, what not to wear. So I think it's a quite a interesting dynamic that happens, especially for individuals who may be at a kind of a late teenager adolescent age, and it impacts them heavily. I can tell you that a lot of these people don't talk about family pressures in a good sense. They don't they're not happy about that. They talk about as a kind of extra thing they have to carry over and or carry around and negotiate it in addition to all the responsibilities they might have as a student. So there's a pressure on them to choose the right profession, but pressure doesn't pressure doesn't end there. So then pressure is right to choose pressure to choose the right person to marry, and then once that choice is made, who to marry and who not to marry is also pressure. Means some people are very prescriptive that you cannot step out of the line. If you are religious, you can marry only within your religious structure. Some people maybe have different kind of, so it is quite a big thing. It's, I think, if I'm not incorrect in labeling it, it's a kind of a white elephant which is in every Indian home, but nobody want to recognize it, and sometimes we brush it aside thinking this is the way we have evolved as a society, because we tend to think we are very communal. We think of ourselves as a community, but it does have a unintended side effects which actually a lot of young generation, uh, it adds to their angst.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'd like to share more, but my wife would probably kill me when it comes to we're talking about family pressures and all the stuff that's happening in terms of, who to marry, who not to marry, occupations, all these kinds of things. But life is tough enough, or can be tough enough as it is, with just social pressures in general, right? I think that's evident. Just peer pressure, pressure to perform, social media, and now you add on a different layer, which is it could be one of the toughest layers is the pressure that we get from our parents, the pressure that we get from our family members or extended family. That I know that there's good intentions behind it, but it doesn't always end up having the best result because sometimes, and I know, I feel this often as well, is we carry those pressures with us throughout our adulthood, and then we relay those same pressures onto our children, and sometimes those same expectations without maybe even consciously knowing about it or being aware of it. So I think one of the things, especially in our culture, the one thing that I see the most is we do want to please our parents to such a large degree that I've seen a lot of people avoid doing what they truly love to do or living a life that they want to live because they're trying to make other people happy. I think that's where things get a little bit detrimental. And I think there's a two-part here, Parmjit, because there's a part of what do we do as individuals who are feeling the pressure, but then also how do you educate those that are pressuring or applying the pressure because they're doing it in a lot of ways uh, with good intentions, but they just don't know what the consequences are.
It's interesting, actually. In one of my courses at Mac, we have a book by Prophet. Sorry, book by the name of The Prophet by Gibran Khalil Gibran. He's a Lebanese American author, and oftenly the peer pressure will show up. The conversation about family pressures will show up when we are reading through that book. And one of the chapters in that book is on children, and one of his very beautiful quotation, which I love the most, is that um, your childrens are not your childrens, they come through you but not from you. um, and it is one of the things, it simply quashed down that idea of ownership, that their life's longing for itself, they don't come from. But most of us parents, even though we do feel that kind of sense of ownership, that our kids are our kids, but if you think about it in a more spiritual sense, they are, as Gibran says, their life longing for itself. We are simply vessels through which they have arrived, and owning the vessel is like containing its potential. So whenever we do that, we in fact do uh, at the peril of, for the kids. Means I can talk about it from a personal level. We have uh, two kids, and one of our kids is now about to enter into university. So I have found myself many times being reminded of Gibran's conversation, that I should be very sparing when I give advice to my daughter. Uh, Even though I do make a kind of a very informed choice, that every parent have a responsibility to share and teach certain things to their kids, but teaching kids is not about owning everything. So sometimes we think about that, you owe me. The idea that because I gave or participated in the process of giving you birth, that you owe me, is actually slightly dysfunctional idea, um, because it creates a very difficult level of expectations. It binds both the parents and the kids. In fact, it does not let the love that could exist between the parent and the kids to flourish in a largely unconditional way. However, I will say as a footnote that as parents, we all, I think I am guilty of that, where I have found myself overstepping that thought process because we get scared. We do certain things out of fear. Sometimes we do out of safety. Sometimes we do out of. But again, I think as parents, we all do that. The more important thing I've learned going through this process is how to step back and respect those boundaries and let the kids flourish. Give them a means kids are like plants. You have to care for them, but you also have to leave them alone. If you keep on tinkering with the plant every day, you are actually in fact hastening their demise at one point. And when we keep on doing the same with the kids, we are in fact hamstringing them. So that is my thought on that. It's a tight rope we all parents have to walk through. But the more important question is that, should we all develop a kind of a self-awareness so that we do what is required of us, but we do not overstep the boundaries, which in fact harms the kids in the long way.
That's such a powerful phrase too that you shared in terms of being a vessel, not owning. That's such a interesting way of looking at it, and I think just taking that to heart has a huge impact. I try as a father to not be controlling, and I think that's the borderline, right? Because you want to teach. So here's my perspective as a parent. My role is to love, protect, provide, and teach my children. And those are the roles that I see. but that can sometimes be, it's borderline, because part of that is like, okay, how much do I have to control here? For example, my son loves to eat junk food. If he's given the option, he would eat junk food all day. And he's going to be 9 years old in a week, and he's gained some extra pounds. Like he's a little bit chubby. And not that I care if he's chubby or not, but I'm a little bit worried about his health long term if he continues that on. And he's always saying, Dad, why can't I make my own choices? And I have to sit there and really think about that. It's like, yeah, I want to be able to give him the freedom to make the choices. So it's an interesting one, because I'm always talking to him and saying, yeah, you can eat what you like if it's healthy and if you choose to work out, and if you know how to balance. So we're constantly trying to find that, okay, eat junk food, but in moderation, exercise as well, but also eat healthy food. And it's a tricky one, but I know I can see how that can be extended. What happens when he's 20 years old? What happens when he's 25 years old? Am I still going to try to guide him from that perspective? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see that. But again, going back to that quote, man, that's powerful. I think if we took a look at that, really applied that as parents, I think it could really shape and help our children as well.
It is. I think one of the parenting is one of the most trickiest thing, because whereas love for your kids can suddenly become a controlling issue, because love can come with so many strings, especially when it is conditional. um, and and I think we all parents work through that. I have personally. We often get suckered into thinking that, okay, just because someone is your son or daughter, they owe it to you. Yeah,
Hmm.
means it is wonderful if your son and daughter can actually relate to you in that sense. They experience that sense of belonging. But this whole idea of ownership, that you owe it to me, to this, it it created dysfunctional, or injected dysfunctional element to the whole thing. It also raises your expectation, which, regardless of whether you like it or not, expectations are one of the biggest asset you can have, which can backfire at you, because more you are going to expect from the people you love, the more likely it is going to be not that way.
Yeah.
So it I think it's, to me, the past 18 years have taught me this tightrope walking, where I have to do my due diligence as a parent, to exactly what you said, to love and protect and provide, but also teach them some very basic lessons, which, because there are certain things we have to, as parents, teach them. I don't think, even though it this argument is very seductive, that kids can learn on their own, that everybody has to make certain mistakes to learn, and I agree with that each one of us has to make mistakes. But the problem is, some mistakes are irreversible. you
Hmm.
know
Yeah. For
so
example,
those,
yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
no so some mistakes can be irreversible, which I think, as parents, we have to tell them that if you go that road, or the way I have a conversation with my kids, that there are certain, you can take any road, and every road, or any road, has a upside and downside. The
Hmm.
question you need to ask is that, do you have an exit at one point from that road, especially if it has a uh, huge downside. If you
Yeah.
don't have it, then you're stuck with it. And I think that's where our parental responsibility, there are certain things I need to teach them. Of course, I totally agree that everybody has to make mistake. I am okay with the fact that my son will make his own mistakes, my daughter will make its own mistakes, and but my hope is that they will not make such mistakes that will be irreversible in that sense. And this is my role, this is why my role of parent is that I can tell them a little bit, there are certain mistakes which you can reverse and do other things, but there are certain things, certain roads are actually irreversible. You can't undo certain things.
Hmm.
And my sense would be that I don't tell them not go there, I tell them try not to go there, because it is going to have, first, you are going to waste your time going on that road. Second, you have to waste the next phase of your life trying to come back, that is not a time worth spending.
Hmm. Yep. It can take a
Anyhow,
choice.
you wanted to say something. Yeah.
Well, I think you touched on a few points. One of the things that stands out for me is it's really easy to get into this whole what's right or wrong, right? With this whole morality, especially when it comes to our children. And I've had to, just in my own personal perspective from my own life, something shifted for me when I took a look at things being healthy versus unhealthy instead of right or wrong, because people have the choice to do what they want, including myself. But if I take a look and if my habits, my routines, my perceptions, my mindset is not healthy, that it's not healthy. If I'm not eating healthy, if I'm not exercising, for example, that's unhealthy. There's long-term consequences of that. But for example, is eating junk food right or wrong? It's not right or wrong. It's how much are you consuming, and to a certain point, does it become unhealthy? So these are things that we have to take a look at. The other thing that popped up for me when you were talking is we have, especially in our community, this whole concept of sacrifice for our children, sacrifice for others, and therefore, because we sacrifice, you owe me. And I've heard this so many times, especially with Indian parents. You know, I came to this country, for example, and I gave up everything and I worked my, said, we didn't do this and we didn't go for dinners and we didn't spend money like this. Now you guys owe us, right? We did it for you. Now you guys owe us. At least marry the person that we want you to marry or do the occupation that we want you to have. You know, it becomes that guilt trip now. And in our culture, we're very good at doing this. And
It,
and as a person on the receiving side, we have to know when to stand up for ourselves because there's that borderline between, I don't want to say taken advantage of, but it is kind of a form of being taken advantage of, but also being able to respect our elders and respect those that have sacrificed for us.
yes, absolutely. I tend to think that sometimes we forget or we blur this boundary. I am means hands down. My personal approach is that uh, it is kind of our responsibility to be respectful to our elders, any elders, not only parents. Um, but then we can, I think, if we develop that kind of wholesome sense of a respect, we can also speak up against anything which seems out of place.
Hmm.
Because this is my personal experience that a lot of individuals in Indian community, they have a very kind of a warped sense of what it means to be respectful.
Mm.
Respectful to them is to just submitting to whatever is being said. To me, that's not being respectful. You're simply submitting because you either do not have the guts to stand up, or second, you don't have a quite a logical reasoning why you should not do what is being asked of you. To me, that's not respectful. For example, I have very different idea about my life, about when I talk to my father. Especially, we don't see each other eye to eye,
Hmm.
but I have always maintained that, listen, this is the thing I want to do, and I have been always been very respectful to him. I will say that there are certain things I will not do, whether you um, it is to your liking or not. But I will not bring a bad name to you. That's one thing I can suggest. That's one thing I can say. And to me, that to me is being respectful. And again, one can argue that what exactly is a bad name, but in his sense, that was a very particular conversation we had. So to me, I think we have to have a conversation about what actually constitutes respect, because once we become aware or become useful, or what you can say, clear about what it means to be respectful, then we can choose not to be disrespectful. And because in our community, our respect about our tradition, our elders, is all about, in fact, submitting things in a wholesale way. To me, that's not respectful. For example, people asking people to go to temples without explaining why should they go there,
Hmm.
you know. And when kids ask them, or kids don't go, then they feel that they are not following traditions. But the problem is that you have not explained to them that why should you go there. If you actually explain to them in a proper way, I think they are most likely to listen to you.
Hmm.
or at least forcing them is actually doing exactly the opposite, because you can force a kid to go to a temple or learn Punjabi or Hindi or whatever language you speak at home. But if you force them because you tell them it's the right thing to do, the moment they are on their own feet and they can think on their own, they will the first one to drop it.
Hmm.
So I think our responsibility as parents is to share with them responsibly what is the merits of, for example, our kids. I would like our kids to speak Punjabi, not because Punjabi is a kind of panacea to things, but I would like them to learn so the mother language.
Hmm.
But we have never forced. At the same time, we have dutifully took our daughter to Punjabi school. She has eighth level degree. She a degree or whatever certificate. She can write well. Um, she doesn't speak well, not because she cannot, but because she is in a kind of environment where Punjabi is not spoken. Where we live, Punjabi is not heavily spoken.
Hmm.
Um, and same is with our son. We will do the same. Our responsibility is to expose them to the possibilities, and we did that part by bringing our daughter to the Punjabi school every Saturday morning. And we and now there are other people who can argue otherwise, that why doesn't she speak Punjabi then? And some of my friends that you should speak Punjabi at home, and we do. But the fact is that kids actually spend 8 9 hours at school
Hmm.
talking in English.
Yeah, not
So
speaking
we
Punjabi.
don't, hmm? That creates
Yeah.
problem. And we have seen this with our daughter at the initial stages, that she started getting confused about these two languages.
Yeah, I guess I'm a big fan. When you talk about Punjabi, I'm one of those things. I actually have to schedule my kids for the next Punjabi lesson here. They do it online, but I'm a big stickler. Like I want my kids to learn Punjabi because I want them to keep the heritage. I want them to keep the culture, and be able to go into family functions and actually be able to speak and understand and not look like, because there's a confidence level for them too. If they don't understand the conversation of someone speaking to them, an elder, whoever it is, it impacts their confidence levels. So if they can go in and be more confident, it's only going to help them.
And
Um,
also,
Sorry, go ahead.
if I may quickly add, because I think our is getting slightly longer. uh, Learning multiple languages is good for your learning process.
Hmm.
That's not so I invite them that you learn not only Punjabi, or at least I will say learn Punjabi because it's our mother language. Learn all the language you can do, because by doing that you're exposing yourself to a way of thinking which may not be available to you if you know only English or Punjabi or French.
Yep, completely agree. So this was an interesting topic, kind of a hot topic. I'm sure we could do some more, and we'll probably do a part two at some point in the series here. But Parmjeet, I want to thank you. Any last words for the audience here?
The last word, I think I will leave the folks with reminding again the quotation from Gibran, that your children are not children. Your children, they come uh, through you, but not from you. I think that's such a powerful reminder to all of us as parents, that we don't own our kids. They are life's blessing. We are the vessels. But if you want your kids to flourish, teach them, but try not to control them, because they also have to make their own mistakes.
Yeah, brilliantly said. Very powerful quote. I know I'll be taking that to heart. So thank you, Parmjeet, and thank you out there for watching this. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share with your network, because your support means a lot to us. And then until next time, all the best.